Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about validity of measurement tools. So we also will be talking about validity of research studies. So it's important not to get too confused. Focus in this video is on measurement tools. So we've already talked about operational definitions of variables. So when we're looking to study a concept or a construct, we first need to define it, right? And then we also took the Forer personality test and learned all about the Barnum effect and how we are susceptible to believing the results of a personality test as being accurate and specific to ourselves when we're primed for something else. So hopefully after that you wondered, how do we know if a personality test is real? Are there even real personality tests? What's going on there, right? So with measurement tools, we want to look at reliability and validity when we are choosing them for research and also for any other decision-making process. So the following lecture video is from the spring of 23 in my Psych 100 class, and we discussed measurement tools and validity right after we took the Barnum test, or the Forer test, to learn about the Barnum effect. If you have not yet done that, go ahead and go back to the lecture on individual differences and find out what we're talking about so that you'll understand what's happening here. How do you know if a personality test is real? So, are any personality tests real, right? First, you got to think about what is personality, right? Like, what are you interested in when you're saying, what's my personality, right? And is it real? And are these constructs, do they even make sense? Why are we even talking about them, right? Yes, so there are personality tests that are valid in terms of grouping people, identifying traits, things like that, right? What is the use of that, though? It's a really good question, right? What is the point? Like I said, a lot of this is you could get to know yourself just by answering those questions. It's useful. It's useful information, right? But we do need to think about when you're doing a test of, like, you want some information from, like, what kind of job should I be in, right? I want to match with the personality of people who do the job that I'm going to do. You know, I want to find a job that, you know, people with my personality are good at doing or like doing, right? And you would do a personality test and a skills inventory, right? You would do an inventory of skills, like, what am I good at, right? Now remember, metacognition isn't all that great for most humans, right? So even if you're rating like what you're good at, you're probably not all that great at deciding whether you're good at it, right? Sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. But so even that is still, you got to, you know, you have to take it for what it is. It can be useful, but you need to gather a lot of data, right? I was listening to something today about how feelings are data, right? And how we talked last week about how a lot of adults still don't know how to identify their feelings, right? And because we've been pushing them away for so long. Like, we don't like negative feelings, so we're just going to deny them. But if we don't know how to name them and do something with them, we can't, they're not useful to us. But they are data, right? Your feelings are data. Your personality is data. Your skills are data in terms of if you want to evaluate what a situation's going to be like for you. Am I an introvert or an extrovert? You probably already have a sense of whether you are more introverted or more extroverted. And that's how we use those words. We don't say one or the other. It's I am more extroverted or I am more introverted. And that usually means I'm more seeking stimulation from the outer world or seeking stimulation from my inner world. Those things are useful to know. That's data that's important to know, because then if you're planning out, you know, where you're going to live in college and who you're going to live with and what kind of activities you're going to join. If you are somebody who needs that alone time, that's important data. You need to be aware of that. That doesn't mean you're never going to go out or spend time with people. It means maybe you need a room to yourself so that you can go away and be alone when you need to, right? So that's data you can use to make your decisions. Okay, so personality is data you can use to make decisions. All right, so reliability. When we're thinking about whether something's reliable, we are thinking about whether or not it is reliable, right? We know what the word reliable means, right? When somebody's reliable, you can count on them. They're consistent. You can predict what they're going to do, right? And they're going to do the same thing each time, right? Which is why you can predict what they're going to do. So a test that is reliable is something that is going to give you the same result each time that you take it. So if you were to go and take the Forer test again, that one would always give you the same answer, right? That's how it's set up. So it's reliable. So reliability is not enough, right? Validity is also important. Accuracy, design, measuring what it's designed to measure. Okay? So think about any personality test or any other kind of skills test or something else that you might take, right? What is it designed to measure? We talked about this with research. If I want to measure texting and driving, I could do it in any number of ways. How am I going to make it most accurate, right? Observing it, actually observing it happening is going to be more accurate than just asking somebody, do you text and drive, right? So that's the validity part of your measurement. Okay, so how do we know? How do we know if it's really measuring what we think it's going to measure, right? So how do we know? We take a test that we know. Let's say for personality tests, we take a test that we know, or an inventory, some measure of personality that we know has a lot of validity already, because we do have them. Okay, so if we have a test that we know already has some pretty good reliability, and then we take the Disney villain test, okay? And let's say, it just gives you the name of a villain, but hopefully it gives you some sort of description, right? Let's see, does that description match up against some of the descriptions you might get from this really reliable and valid test over here, okay? So we would compare them and see, does it make sense against that? And that's part of validity, okay? So to break it down more clearly with another example of measurement, reliability is when you get on a scale or you're using a food scale, right? And you want to measure, I want a pound of something, right? And it tells me that this 1 pound bowl of sugar, and I put it on here and it measures a pound, okay? Right? And then the next time I measure a pound, I already know it's a pound, I put it on there, it also says it's a pound, right? That's reliable. If it tells me each time that it's then it's not reliable, right? I know it's valid if I have some other way of measuring it. If I measure it over here and it tells me it's a pound, and I measure it over here and it tells me a pound, then I know it's valid. If I have something that I get from the store and it tells me 16 ounces, 1 pound, right? Tells me on it is, and I put it on a scale and it tells me 2 ounces. Is my scale valid? Is my scale valid? If I take something I know is a pound and I put it on the scale and it tells me 2 ounces, is it valid? No, it's not valid. If I take it off and I put it on again and it tells me 2 ounces, and I take it off and I put it on again, it tells me 2 ounces, is it reliable? Yeah. It's reliable. It's not valid. Okay? So you need both. All right? Okay, so that's a whole bunch of words because I just added this new slide and I didn't have time to make it look better. I should do 1 slide per one, right? Which I will, but a couple different kinds of validity, what we're talking about when we're talking about measurement. Convergent is, and I'm putting those in Blackboard, don't worry. Convergent is when we are looking at things that are the same. So when we take one scale and another scale and we match them up and see whether or not they measure the same way, right? That's convergent. Whether we take the Disney villain test and that personality test, they're not exactly the same, right? They're not measuring the same exact thing, but they're similar. We look for something similar in there. Do they generally agree with each other? Okay. Then there's criterion validity, which is comparing the test or measurement with some sort of real world thing that's happening. Okay, so if we, maybe it's even something like, okay, well, let's do extroverted, introverted, right? So some of the things on the questions for a personality test on that would be asking about, like, do you like to be sociable? Do you like to go out a lot? Do you like parties? Do you, all those the questions like that, right? And so the real world outcome might be, okay, how many parties did you go to in the last month, right? Or how many, how many times did you talk to your friends in the last month? And does that match with your measure of yourself as being extroverted, okay? And then discriminant validity is a negative correlation. So that would be those would be a positive correlation, right? They both go up or they both go down. And a negative correlation would be when one is they're not correlated with each other, right? So it's actually not a negative. I'm sorry. It should be no relationship or not correlated, right? So which actually is a flat line. It's not like this. It's no relationship at all. So like we don't expect extroversion to be related to how neat you are and how organized you are. That shouldn't have anything to do with each other, right? So if we want it to be a good test that actually just measures extroversion and we're not worried about other parts of your personality, then it should have a weak relationship with a measure of how neat you are, right? Two different things. They should be separate. That's discriminant validity, okay? Predictive validity is being able to predict your behavior in a situation. So for extroversion, it would predict that you would be sociable over the next, it's predicting your actual behavior. You could be extroverted and depressed and not go to any parties, and it's not predicting your behavior. That doesn't mean that you're not extroverted. It means that you also have something else going on, right? So you also have to consider those sorts of things, okay? So if you want to know if a test is reliable and valid, you need to consider all of these things. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of reliability too. Like you could take the test now, you could take the test in 2 months, and are they the same? Or you could take them both right now, and are they the same, right? That's looking at whether or not they're reliable. But there's so many different ways. So when you're trying to choose what are you going to use to measure something, you need to consider all of these things, right? So, and that's why I look at the stats of your checkpoints after you take them, because I can get all sorts of numbers that tell me whether or not these questions are good questions. Okay, and I can throw out any that aren't really good ones. Good at doing what? Measuring what you know. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. I want to look at, is it doing a good job at measuring what you know? So, questions?